Mutooni from Sanlam Investments joins us now for a look into the day's trading session. Roy, thanks so much for your time today. Let's start off with that U.S. inflation print, delayed of course, but still matters in the grander scheme of things, coming in at 2.7%, lower than initial expectations of around 3%. How are you viewing this print? How important is it, considering that we don't have that month-on-month comparison as well?
Look, broadly, it's actually very positive. If you think about it, what we've been concerned about is that they've been cutting as inflation is rising. And that's made things a little bit difficult because what you're doing is basically supercharging the economy. But this print effectively tells you that maybe inflation isn't as much of a problem as it was, as we think it is, or rather as we've been thinking that it is. And maybe they should focus more on the labor market weakness, which implies they've actually got some grounds for a number of rate cuts over the next 6 to 12 months. So I think it's bullish for the markets. You've seen the US markets react quite positively, and the dollar becomes a little bit softer. So that's positive for EMs and positive for markets outside of the US. So I think broadly a positive thing.
Yeah, positive print, but we are still far from that 2% target. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the next months. Talking about inflation, consumer prices slowing in the UK as well, still above the 2% target at around 3.2%. That aside, BOE cutting rates today, a move that was widely expected. What did you make of that? Just looking at the economic situation in that country, also on the back of that budget we got last month.
Well, it looks like they've engineered a soft landing for themselves. True, the economic growth is not particularly aggressive, but the forecast for inflation from here on are around that 2%. And in fact, they could dip slightly below that 2% level over the short term. So they seem to have engineered a soft landing. It's unlikely they cut more than they've cut already right now, but it's positive. I think it means they're looking forward and saying that there is at least some growth in the Eurozone.
And talking about an easing cycle, you mentioned there that this is probably the last one in the BOE cycle. We're also in a similar situation over in Europe, where the central bank kept rates on hold, and there is talk that there probably won't be any cuts anytime soon. Do you hold the same view?
Well, the UK is definitely struggling with inflation as well, inflation and low growth. So it's quite a conundrum for the central bank there to decide what to do. But it's quite clear that I think when you look forward on the forecasts, nobody's forecasting for further cuts.
Yes.
It's more likely hikes. It actually felt from the statement that was a bit more hawkish than dovish. So still not out of the woods yet for the UK.
Then over in Europe, with the ECB holding rates steady today, do you think we're at the end of that cutting cycle?
We probably are. We probably are. I don't think they can go below this. The inflation there is already at the 2% target.
Yeah.
So from here on, it's the economy effectively getting the impetus to start growing.
And that economy has been struggling for a bit. You take a look at countries like Germany, where you expect growth to be really, really strong, and that's not picking up as expected. Let's move over to company news, where we see Warner Brothers not keen on Paramount's takeover bid and actually favoring that Netflix deal. Just your analysis on that, considering, you know, President Trump's relations with the Ellisons, and also, I guess, his influence or potential influence on antitrust bodies as well.
Look, whenever a takeover bid goes hostile and you have multiple competing interests and bidders, it becomes a competition for the press and the hearts and the minds of the people out there. The board must feel slighted for these guys to have gone against them, because they've rejected the Paramount bid repeatedly.
Yes.
I think 2 or 3 times before. So it's always going to get he said, she said, we don't like this, we don't like that. I think at the end of the day, the proof will be in the pudding. When the bid is actually when the hostile bid is put to shareholders in all of its under the glare of light. So you know whether the financing is in place, you know how much you're guaranteed, you know when you're going to get paid. That's the only time we're actually going to know who has the better bid. But
Yeah.
as it stands right now, expect the board to be negative towards the hostile bidders. Expect the hostile bidders to do all they can to convince shareholders to vote for them. And that's just how that game is played. Very difficult to tell from where I'm sitting which one's going to win as it stands right now. It's. I think this is the beginning of quite a long journey, quite
Yeah.
a long hostile journey.
And I was about to say that I think over the next year we'll be watching that deal unfold quite closely, as the deals a deal of this kind of magnitude takes quite a long time to be sealed. I want us to come back home just looking at the rand, which has had a pretty good year when looking at it against the dollar. Roy, are we still making gains on the back of a softer dollar? You have mentioned that when we were talking about the inflation print. Are these gains just sustainable, considering that, you know, that could change? There's also been talk around the rand's risk profile, and that has changed as well on the back of the lower inflation target.
So all of that probably plays some role, but to me, the biggest role is the terms of trade. And the terms of trade are the balance between what we export relative to what we import. So more recently, what you've seen is the oil price has come off, and then gold and platinum prices have increased, and quite dramatically. When you have that net balance, that's your terms of trade. And what that does is it strengthens or weakens your rand. And in this case, the balance is positive, so the rand's definitely on a strengthening bias. For so long as you see those commodity prices heading in that direction, oil down, platinum up, gold up, then you've got strong support for the rand. And then you look at the other things that you're talking about. A weaker dollar definitely supports
Yeah.
supports the stronger rand. And then just the whole diminished risk profile of the currency and of the country definitely helps. Remember, however, that we're heading into election season, into the next
Yes.
year or so. So maybe some of that comes off. But I think you can be relatively comfortable that for so long as commodity prices are rising and the dollar is weaker, the rand's going to be well supported.
All right. Let's get your stock pick before I let you go.
My stock pick would be Premier Food Group. And they've just gone into this merger with Rhodes. And
Yeah.
I think some of the commentators figured that there's not much they have in common. I just think when you put these two businesses together, you get a much more diversified business that has long prospects of growth over the next few years. I don't think it's expensive. I think the management team was looking to better diversify their holdings, and through this acquisition, they probably will. So I think that would be my call as we stand today.
All right, let's leave it there. Roy, thanks so much for your time and joining us this evening. Now, that was Roy Mutooni from Sanlam Investments.